The body talks about the digestion of food as nutrition for the body. It also talks about the digestion of the experiences of our lives as a way of feeding our spirit, our soul, our life journey, whatever you want to call it. I would say globally, we are conditioned, acculturated to value or place a value judgment on our experiences during childhood, whether the experience is good or bad, positive or negative, reward or regret, achievement, mistake. And certainly in our Western or American culture, where we have a capitalistic society that values success, we can only have good, positive, rewarding, achieving experiences. We can't have any bad, negative mistakes or regrets. So by and large, people are not upset or in therapy over the positive, rewarding experiences in their lives. Those are easily digested based on our conditioning, because those are what we would consider to be winning experiences. Where people are stuck is in their experiences that they call negative regrets or mistakes. The body says that all experiences have nutrition. And so if you do have digestive complaints, or you have been diagnosed with something going on with the GI tract, the body would invite you to go back and identify those undigested negative experiences and perceive them from a compassionate third person, to identify the nutrition that you have not received, which has kept those experiences or those memories stuck, so that they can pass and you receive the nutrition from those experiences. Now, I know you might be saying, well, what does that mean? So, for example, I know people that were married and got divorced 20 years ago, and they are still angry and bitter about their divorce. So that's undigested. And if the divorce was that bad and it's been 20 years, I think you would be in glee that you are no longer in that marriage. But for some reason, there's a payoff in still being pissed off. But I also know people that have gotten divorced, and within 6 months or a year, they're free and clear. They may even have an amicable relationship with their ex-spouse, and they've moved on. And so why is that? So in those situations where if people, I'm just using the example of leaving a marriage or being upset about a divorce, chances are the reason people hold on to bitterness about a divorce or have a divorce is there's been some level of betrayal, disrespect, manipulation, abuse, or being taken advantage of. I mean, those kind of seems to me to be kind of the top reasons, or just, treated unkindly or disrespected in terms of why you would leave a marriage. So if you can go back, I'm just using this as an example again, if you go back from a compassionate third person and say, okay, this is how I was treated in the marriage and I didn't like it. But on some level, I showed up in such a way that this other person thought they had permission to treat me this way, that it would be okay. That I had not set a context or a domain that said respect and fulfillment is going to be what this marriage is about. So had that not happened, you wouldn't be aware that that's how you're positioning yourself out in the world. Because I go back to how you do anything is how you do everything. So if that's how you're positioning yourself in your marriage, chances are on some level or to some degree that's what's happening at work, happening with your siblings, happening with your children, happening with yourself. So you can acknowledge that person. Doesn't necessarily mean it's okay. But you can acknowledge, it doesn't mean, I'm never saying that abuse is okay. But you can acknowledge that person for revealing that to you. Otherwise, you would continue on with your life, positioning yourself in disrespected ways. So there would be an example of the positive nutrition. And I've also said this before, I know sometimes what's happened in people's marriages or what's happened you could take that same version of that and apply it to what happened between you and your parents in childhood, if you had a really abusive childhood. And I've worked with some people that said, what happened for me was just so unforgivable in my marriage or so unforgivable in childhood. I just can't get to a place of forgiveness because it was so horrific. And what I would say is, okay, but if chances are if you're unwilling to forgive them, and if how you do anything is how you do everything, chances are you're unwilling to forgive yourself on some level. Because I think sometimes for children, if their parents' marriage is not going well or falling apart, then children will take responsibility for that. They somehow see themselves in that role. So I would say, let's go back and start focusing on forgiveness with yourself before we even talk about forgiving others. Because we want to fortify your bank account of forgiveness. Because if you're bankrupt, you can't forgive others if you haven't even forgiven yourself yet. Now, I'm going to add this too. And this is for perhaps mental health practitioners or health counselors. So we've talked about digestion, where experiences have entered into the digestive process, but they've gotten stuck. When we look at throat and esophagus, those experiences have not even moved into the digestive process. That they have been so avoided or so pushed down. Now, as I have experienced people with narcissistic personality disorder or narcissistic personality characteristics, those people often have GERD. Okay? And conventional psychology says there's no cure for narcissism, but the motivations for narcissism begins in childhood from severe abusive trauma. And I'm going to say that since that trauma has never been allowed to even move into the digestive process, that would explain why people that have been assigned narcissistic personality have GERD. Now, just because you have GERD does not mean you have narcissistic personality disorder. But if you're a mental health care provider and you're working with your patients or your clients and you recognize that they are either showing characteristics of narcissistic personality disorder and they have GERD, then you've got a connection right there between what's motivating their narcissism and what's motivating their GERD. And I'm just curious if that would be a way to heal those people, if they could begin to process and digest those experiences that they have not allowed themselves to digest.